Hello.
Hi, Ryan. How are you?
Hi. Good. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Pretty full agenda tonight.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. We're just waiting a few more minutes, a couple more members to join, and we'll get things underway.
I am Bill Imhoff, just introducing myself.
Hi, Bill. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Good evening, all.
Good evening.
Welcome to the ZBA meeting. As some of you may know, this is my first rodeo as chair of the ZBA, so I hope you'll all be easy on me. Doug, could you, and I'm Nancy Moore, by the way, Alder Nancy Moore. I have been working in zoning in another capacity, which is that I've been chair of the Plan Commission for quite a few years. So anyway, welcome to the meeting. Doug, are we still waiting for people, or are we?
There's one more that we're waiting for, but we do have a quorum, so we can go either way.
Okay, great. Thank you. Then with that, I'll call the meeting to order. Doug, would you like to call the roll?
Yes, and this other member is just joining, so perfect timing. Chair Moore.
Here.
Mr. Conrad.
Here.
Ms. Poloris.
Here.
Mr. Schweiger is joining, and Mr. Patton.
Here.
Both Ms. Steele and Mr. Davies are excused.
Thank you. Do we have any appearances from anyone who is not otherwise involved in a public hearing this evening? Hearing none, we'll close the appearance section. That takes us to number 4, approval of the minutes of February 18th, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, great. We have a motion and a second. Are there any changes, corrections, additions to the minutes from the 18th? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the minutes carry. We'll move to number 5, the public hearing. Jennifer Solomon at 408 Southern Court in requesting a variance from Monona Municipal Court of Ordinances, section 480-24D4C, rear yard setbacks for the purpose of constructing a new screened-in porch on the property. Case number Z-003-2021. I assume Jennifer's here. And the court is yours. If you're
Thank
on mute, please mute yourself.
Sorry about that. I'm Jenna with EJ Renovations. Jennifer Solomon has contracted me to build the screen porch. And we are requesting a variance to the 40-foot rear setback because the unconforming shape of the lot doesn't allow for that. The house doesn't even have the 40-foot rear yard setback. It's actually at 22 feet. So we're looking to build a screen porch at the rear of the house where her deck is now, and it'll be a little bit larger than her existing deck. But we are looking to get this variance so that we can build it. So the rear setback from the screen porch to the rear lot line would be at 14 feet at the minimum. The reason we, oh, go ahead. The reason we are looking to build this porch so large is Jennifer is in a wheelchair and she does need access to get around furniture, as well as a ramp to get out of the area. Her and her mother live there together, both with medical issues. So this space would allow for more space for them to spend time in their backyard and enjoy the mature wooded lot, which is full of mosquitoes. So this will allow them to enjoy it at a more leisurely pace. And it shouldn't affect any of the neighborhoods. It's on a cul-de-sac, butting up to houses, and it's all fenced in properties at the rear, and all wooded lots. So you can't really see your neighbors to begin with. But yeah, so we're hoping to allow them to have a more usable space as well as add value to their home.
Thank you, Jenna. Is there anyone else here, or Doug, is there anyone else here from this application?
I did receive one public comment that was from the neighbors at 407 Sethany Court, and it's Paul and Joyce Ament, A-M-E-N-T. They have no concerns with the city granting approval for the construction of the screen porch.
Thank
Thanks.
you. With that, then I will close the public hearing and move to number 6, consideration of action by Jennifer Solomon, 408 Sethany Court, requesting the variance of the rear yard setbacks for the purpose of constructing a new screen porch on the property, case number Z-003-2021. ZBA, I'm looking at you. Some feedback.
Jenna, you described a fenced-in yards behind. Can you provide a little more explanation of what is behind this proposed deck?
Yep, so it's rear lots of houses behind her. So it's her rear lot butts up to the rear lots at the next block over. it looks like there are 3 properties that butt into the back of her triangular shaped rear lot. And it's all, her fence goes along her property.
Any other questions from board members?
I have a question. If you were to design am I correct in understanding that if you were to do this without a variance, would the design of the structure be such that the wheelchair wouldn't even be able to access the structure?
I mean, it's attached to the house, so the wheelchair right now goes out onto the deck, and then she has a ramp down to the yard. So we're looking to rebuild that a little bit larger so that they can have a screened-in porch with some furniture, and she can maneuver her wheelchair around and then get out through the ramp down to the yard still. But yeah, the whole house, there's only one section of the house that actually meets the 40-foot setback right now, and that's the far corner.
I think, Jenna, if I could just follow up on Chris's question, it seemed like what he was saying is that if you were to build the screen porch on the same footprint that the deck currently is, i.e. which would not require a variance, would you still be able to move the wheelchair around in that screen porch area?
Oh, no, they wouldn't. It's most of the existing deck is the ramp right now. And there's just a side little sitting area that she has a table in. So she basically comes out in her wheelchair and sits at the landing of the ramp, and then has company come and sit at a table in this small area. The existing deck where the sitting is now is about 8 by 10. So she can't really maneuver around in that space. It's mostly just for company.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Other questions at this point before we get into deliberations? Are there any other questions for Jenna about this particular variance request?
Yeah, how would the deck impact your neighbor at 407?
Let me see which one is 407. 407 butts up to the side lot. So I don't know that they'd even be able to see it. Maybe if they were in their very back part of the yard, they could see it.
Yeah, it looks like the house is kind of, the back of the house is kind of faced a little bit away from each other.
Right.
That was my question of whether or not they would even be aware of it unless they were being told it was there.
Other questions from the board? Okay, so where are we at as it relates to unnecessary hardship? Board members? Do we want to weigh in? Brad, do you want to weigh in? Do you want to start us off?
I think there's accessibility issues. I think that seem to be presently even present in the home that go to the permissible use of the property. And I think, that's where I'm viewing a hardship here. If we are able to find a hardship.
Okay. Anybody else? Ryan?
I tend to agree with what Brad is saying. I think it's a obvious accessibility issue. I mean, if there were with the current shape of the lot and the existing setback not meeting the standard setback, the wheelchair wouldn't even be able to use the screened-in porch if it was the standard size or the size that it is now.
Chris?
If the owner wasn't in a wheelchair and a wheelchair wasn't involved with this request, I don't even think we'd be having this discussion. So I mean, it's all about the wheelchair and the accessibility, and so it's a pretty clear hardship to me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else from the board?
I think it's hard to see where they would put it anywhere else. I mean, at least 2 sides of the house, 3 sides are not in compliance. And I think it's, yeah, if it's a permissible use and it's a hardship, the size or the shape of the lot.
Okay. Well, Beth, you let us right into the, I guess, the second question, right? Which is to say the physical property limitations, unique physical property limitations. Anything else you want, Brad?
Oh no, I'd agree. There's definitely, this property is unique. It's an odd shape. It appears, I think it's a little small. It's already non-conforming in the house itself. So I think there are definite unique physical property limitations.
Anybody else? Nothing else as it relates to that. Public interests? Anything that you guys want to say as it relates to the public interest? If not, I'm happy to.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I was asking about the backyard, right? With it that close to another backyard, that could potentially be public interest. But what I'm hearing is that that's because of the shape of the lot and they're already fenced in, that it shouldn't impact public interest.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Hearing nothing else, is it Brad?
My only concern with the public interest is whether or not, you know, the impact on this neighbor at 407 that has filed a letter stating some unspecified concerns, but you know, without hearing more of that, I don't see how this is not in the public interest. I mean, I think it's going to definitely increase the attractiveness of the property.
I can jump into that. I'm sorry if you guys misheard. They were, the neighbors at 407 had no concerns. They were in support of the.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I misheard.
Okay, that being the case, unless you all have other comments, do I have a motion? Anybody like to make a motion?
I would move to approve. I think there's the unique property limitations given the size of the lot, odd shape, and that the home itself doesn't meet the setback, except for one corner I heard. That there's a hardship met with the accessibility issues, preventing permissible use of the property. I think it's in the public interest. There's no objection from the neighbor, as I've been corrected on. And I think it meets the purposes of the zoning ordinance. And so I would move to approve.
Okay. Do I have a second?
A second.
A second from Chris. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Motion carries. Thank you, Jenna.
Thank you.
Next up, number 7, public hearing from Colleen Conaway and Greta Seckman at 4313 Winnequa Road, are requesting a variance from the municipal code ordinances section 480-24D 4B, side yard setbacks, and 480-24D 4D, shore yard setbacks for the purpose of constructing a new deck at the rear of the property, case number Z004-2021. Colleen Colleen and Greta are here. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Colleen Conway.
Great.
Nice to meet you all.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm Greta Seckman.
Thank you for being here. Go ahead.
Yeah. You go ahead. Good. Okay. So our house is a 94-year-old cottage that is already non-conforming with these codes. And when we purchased it, on the shore side, there was a timber built planter box that extended 30 feet the width of the house and 8 feet out, with steps that came from doors down to, a patio. Over the years that rotted away, and it was filled with dirt with plantings in it, and the dirt rotted away the foundational studs behind it, and rodents would get in the crawl space under there, and ants kind of infested it. So when we had it taken away so we could repair the foundational studs, and drew up plans to have a deck, and that will solve several things. The planter, we didn't build it. It was, as I said, it was there when we bought it. Wasn't up to code in the steps. So the steps were really, really narrow, and the landing was really narrow, and people were always hurting themselves on them. One guest broke her ankle. Our kids were always falling on them. So we're asking for a variance so that we can replace that structure with a deck in the same footprint. It would have more code conforming stairs to get us access and be safer. The house is already not, is not 50 feet from the meander line or 7 feet from the setback on the sort of northeast side of the house. And, I think my packet shows photos of the structure that was there, and the damage it did to the footings, not footings, but the studs that hold up the front side of the house. And we're getting older. Colleen is 66. We want safer access to get into the doors with a better landing.
Okay, and anything else? Is there anyone else here to speak on this particular, Doug?
Yes, I did receive one comment, and this was from the neighbors at 4311 Winnequa Road. This is Scott and Tess Klug, K-L-U-G, I believe. And they said they wrote in support of the application. They stated that they think the plans for the new deck essentially duplicate the existing footprint of the previous deck. The construction will improve both the value of their home or both homes. And so they were in support and were not able to join, but wanted to share that. Thanks.
Thank you. We will close the public hearing then and move to number 8, consideration of action. Colleen and Greta at 4313 Winnequa Road with a variance to the Monona Municipal Code of Ordinances for the side yard setbacks and shore yard setbacks for the repurpose of constructing the new deck at the rear of the property, case number Z-004-2021. Once again, I will open it up to the committee for questions to start.
I have a question for Doug. I mean, we know there was already a kind of a legal non-conforming structure there, and they're wanting to simply replace it. and keep that same footprint. So is a variance even necessary if the footprint's not changing?
It would not be if the footprint was not changing, but the proposal as put forward is more rectangular and sort of 8 feet straight out from the house in 30 by 8. The existing planters, as shown, are at more of a 45-degree angle, so you can see kind of the edges and the corners on both sides. So it is more of an expansion of the nonconformity, and that's where the variance comes in.
I see. Okay.
I think we didn't really realize that was part of the variance request. It is a bit of an awkward shape with the kind of angled off there, and we're not sure why they designed and built that way originally, but squaring it off rectangularly was just made sense to the design.
Other questions?
Not sure if I'm seeing this. How high is it off the ground?
4 steps, I think.
It's more than 3 feet. It might be in the survey. Let me look.
Let me see. 4 steps as far as we can determine here.
It's fine.
Or with the landing would be, I guess, the
first step. And then four steps up and then up to the landing.
Okay.
I have the height here somewhere.
So just to clarify, was there was there an implication that there was a deck prior to the planters, or when you're referring to the previous structure, you're just referring to those very attractive planters?
The planters served as a platform and stairs, but they were railroad ties, so they were uneven and there was access to the house.
Yeah, I think the porch, the porch is now the living room. At some point, someone put in those studs that you can see in the photo and built up there. I think that was a porch at some point, and it was remodeled, and that was enclosed. So that's now part of the house. So they must have done that and then added those attractive planters coming down from the house.
Thank you. Other questions?
What's the furthest away that the planters go from the house? Like how?
8 feet.
Okay.
And we propose an 8-foot deck. I guess what I didn't realize is the only design difference is we're doing a rectangle instead of the angle. But if you look at the planters, if you imagine that we're all the way straight across, that's the footprint of the deck.
Okay.
So really the change from the planter is just this strange little kind of triangle,
right,
that you're adding so that it doesn't have this strange shape, which, yeah, I mean, if you made a deck that faithfully reproduced that footprint, it would just kind of be dumb and it would look bad.
And more expensive. I mean, because
and more expensive and yeah.
And then to, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but also unless you put the stairs, if you replicated the planters in deck form, unless you put the stairs somewhere else, it would be difficult to do the stairs to code because you were referencing a width issue, correct?
Yeah.
You'd have to put the stairs somewhere else if you just duplicated, somewhere on the what would be an odd-shaped deck as opposed to planters, in order to have them be up to code in terms of width.
Right.
Exactly, Nancy. That's why we proposing the stairs on this, the far edges of this rectangle.
Right.
You'd enter that way, and then you'd have full access to the doors. Right.
How is it impractical just to fix the stairs?
Well, this whole structure is gone now because it was rotting. So now we can't even access the house on that side.
Well, we noticed that we couldn't open our windows. And so we knew we needed to look at the foundation of the home. So we had the planters removed, and then noticed that there was, quite a bit of damage to the studs. So we had to repair that and determine why the windows weren't opening. So it was important to remove that structure just to have access to be able to repair the damage.
If they just built steps, would they have to apply for a variance?
Uncovered steps that are necessary for access to the building, if they're under 3 feet, they are permissible. But I believe that this, it would be right around that based upon the 4-step calculation. So possibly not. It would depend upon the height of the access point as is.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, let's go step 1 then. Does anybody have any thoughts on the hardship? Chris?
Well, I really want to approve this because this is just it makes so much sense. But we need to have a good argument. So I think we're close. The former structure, the planter, served also as kind of a quasi deck already, and for whatever reason it was designed peculiarly, and normally decks follow a kind of logical rectilinear shape. I don't know, but to faithfully reproduce the former footprint doesn't make sense logically. Now we need to have a hardship, so I think we need to brainstorm a little further, but so let's do that.
Well, there's a hardship that there needs to be stairs, right? That it needs to be accessible. So I think that what Doug described of if perhaps the height already would require a variance. So any sort of structure may require a variance in order for them to be able to access replacing those stairs.
Brad, does that work for you, or?
That just makes it impractical if they're already in need of variance. I think it's also unreasonable to think that they're going to recreate the shape of those planters. They had to be removed to literally repair the property so they could actually use it. Without granting this variance, to allow them to have this deck doesn't impede their use of the property, and whether or not they can, properly go in and out of their house. And I also think it's also avoiding creep because they're not asking to go back any further than they already were.
Right. Right. Beth?
Yeah, I think the existing variance it would be impossible to duplicate. They have to be able to get out of the house. I mean, and they can't really move the house back. So I think the position of the house on the lot is a hardship, or because of just the existing lot. And I think the variance, it's just impossible to duplicate the existing variance. So I think that it's a permissible use. They should be able to get out and comply and make the steps safe.
Once again, Beth has done a nice job leading us into the unique physical property limitations. Anything else on that score? In public interest, anything people would like to share as it relates to the public interest?
I think the safety of the steps is a public interest.
Right.
Or constructing safe steps, sorry.
Right. Right. Okay. That being said, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Would you like to, Chris, would you like to take a stab at, or Beth, either one of you take a stab at articulating beyond the motion, stipulating the hardship and limitations and the public interest in the body of the motion?
Beth said it better than I did, so I think she should speak.
You got to unmute yourself, Beth.
Yep. The hardship is the shape of the lot, the position of the house, and the need to be able to exit the house. I think it's a permissible use because a deck is something that is not considered unpermissible. Sorry, that's sort of bland, and that I think the constructing a safe exit is in the public interest.
Thank you. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. We will now move on to, thank you, Colleen and Greta. We'll now move on to the public hearing number 9, a public hearing for William and Patricia Imhoff at 1401 Baskerville Ave, requesting a variance in the Winona Municipal Code of Ordinances, section 175-22A-4B, street yard fence setbacks, for the purpose of constructing a new safety railing in front of their property, case number Z-005-2021. Welcome, Imhoffs.
Thank you. I'm Bill Imhoff. Next to me is my wife, Pat. We request a variance to install a 34-foot railing along the east side of our driveway. The railing would extend from our handicap ramp down the driveway to end 2 feet before the curb, extending into the right-of-way easement by 11 feet. The slope of our driveway is extremely severe. The railing we have proposed is solely on our property and does not abut or encroach any other property. It is set 2 feet back from the curb. It will not impact any brush, leaf pickup, trash pickup, snow blowing or snow plowing, or street cleaning. Without a railing and depending on the condition of the driveway, it can be extremely difficult to walk back up the slope driveway without hanging on to something. Guests have come to visit and also have great difficulty in going up and down our driveway. We have made many modifications to our home that allow us to age in place. With the installation of this safety railing, we'll be able to extend living in our home for a number of years. We have lived in our home since November of 1980. This project is a cost-effective option that will allow us to continue to age in place with dignity. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Pat, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I second everything he said like a good wife should. No, really, the railing will extend from the handicap ramp that we had installed years ago down to the driveway, taking 11 feet of right of way. It is strictly for safety purposes. I have elderly relatives that try to come and visit and have difficulty traversing the driveway because of the steepness of it, whether the driveway is dry or wet or snow covered. Once it's snow covered or icy, it's almost impossible to be able to get up and down the driveway. Bill was actually stranded down several times this past winter trying to take the garbage cans down. And luckily, some nice strangers stopped by and helped him get back up to the house. If there had been a railing, he would have been able to grab onto something and been able to pull himself back up to the house. That's why we want it. We don't need to fall and break a hip.
Thank you. Is there any other feedback that's been received on this one, Doug?
Nothing else, no.
Okay, thank you. Then I will close the public hearing, number 9, and go to number 10, consideration of action for William and Patricia Imhoff at 1401 Baskerville Ave, requesting the variance from the code 22A 4B street yard fence setbacks for the purpose of constructing a new safety railing in front of their property. Case number Z-005-2021.
If I may just kind of frame this discussion, Chair.
Sure.
Thank you. So this one's a little bit different in that it's not a specific variance request from Chapter 480 of the zoning ordinance. This is an appeal of a determination of the building inspector. 175, Chapter 175 of the ordinance is the building code section, and that is the section where the fence regulations are listed. I'll just run through those just to familiarize you guys that are not familiar with them. In the street yard, so the front of the house, fences are not allowed to be any closer than 6 inches close to the property line, 6 inches back off the street yard property line, and fences are not allowed in either the right-of-way or the easement. This property on Baskerville, given that there is not a sidewalk running alongside of it, there is a pretty decent right-of-way. It's unverified at this point, but it's around 14 feet, 1/4 in depth. And so I spoke with the Department of Public Works, who would regulate the right-of-way, and got their opinion on the request. They, of course, have concerns about things like snow plowing, leaf pickup, things like that from an operational standpoint, and did suggest a couple, the Public Works Director suggested a couple potential conditions that you may choose to include with any motion tonight. So you can see on the photographs that there's actually a retaining wall within the right-of-way, given the slope of the lot. And it was recommended that the fence align with that. It's about 5 feet back from the right-of-way. Again, it would just be from more of an operational standpoint, such that it would be in line with that for any plowing, anything like that, just from a safety standpoint. Additionally, they recommended that a condition be put in that if there is any damage to the fence within the right-of-way, that the city not be liable for that, given it's having permission to potentially be located within the right-of-way. And finally, that they recommended a city right-of-way permit, which is required for any work that takes place within that. So any driveway permits, anything like that, it requires a right-of-way permit. So I just wanted to frame that and include those suggestions from the Public Works Director, just so that you had those as part of this consideration. Thank you.
So Doug, I have a follow-up to that, which is just to clarify on the first one. So Public Works is suggesting that instead of the railing being on where the driveway meets the grass, that the railing would actually be moved back?
No. Sorry, they suggest that it terminate in line with the stone wall, with the retaining wall.
Got it.
That it remain on the driveway, but just that it doesn't extend further down than that.
Right. So if that is there, I'm sorry, is there an estimate as to how far back that retaining wall is?
It was estimated somewhere around 5 feet.
Okay, so if it was in line with that retaining wall, there would be a 5 foot of driveway before you hit that concrete, where there would not be a railing.
Correct. The 5 feet closest to the curb to the street would not have a railing.
Right. Okay.
I see that further down the grass there's like a utility pole and a phone system that's like super close to the curb. So wouldn't the plow truck hit that first anyway? I don't understand why the Public Works guy was like, we need to put it back by the retaining wall.
That's a fair point.
He's in a bad mood. So Mr. and Mrs. Imhoff, if the railing was back by the retaining wall, if it didn't start until it was in line with the retaining wall, how would that affect you?
That would affect us a great deal, considering that's part of the steepest part of our driveway. Is that bottom part is the angle is very severe, and having it end at the retaining wall, that'd still give us 4 or 5 feet that we would have to maneuver without a railing, which would be actually dangerous.
Okay.
That's the most sloped area of the driveway. That's the worst part of it.
Am I correct? This would move it back, what, three feet from where you want to end it, where you're requesting it to end? Is
correct.
That right?
Correct.
Doug, has anyone else in Monona done a railing like this before?
Not that I'm aware of. Certainly not during my time here, and I'm not aware of one. Although this is quite a unique driveway slope compared to many.
Yeah, I think I had a similar question. Is there consideration in the code for a fence versus a safety railing, or are they the same thing?
We did have that discussion, and it doesn't necessarily fall within the definition of a fence if it doesn't have the slats, and it's more of a, there are just a couple posts located with the railing running along, but generally the sentiment of nothing to be located in the right-of-way would still hold true. So I used the fence regulations as sort of the barometer with which to test it, but the right-of-way is the big piece of sort of the discussion at this point, railing or fence. Yeah.
And you said the right-of-way is 14 feet? I don't
yes.
understand that.
So typically that's between 10 and 15 feet is sort of the width of a typical city sidewalk with, the sidewalk and the grass element. And so right-of-way width does vary across the city, but it's not uncommon for that to be the case if there's not sidewalk along the street.
Right. So I would have to imagine if a sidewalk did just come in there down their property, that's where that right of way would be.
Yes, it would align with that. Yeah.
And I think this is more of a Doug question, but you know, when I'm hearing what Public Works was suggesting as maybe some conditions here, I guess if they're asking for if they're asking the Imhoffs to be liable for damage and to continue to have a right-of-way permit, like, I guess, what do they care if it's 5 feet back or if it's a few feet closer? Like, what? I mean, at first I was like, oh, this all is reasonable. But then I'm like, well, if they're going to be liable for the damage, if we make that a condition, like, what do they care?
Mm-hmm. It's a fair point, and I think that if the will of the group is to possibly extend it past the retaining wall, that certainly some sort of condition along those lines of almost, I guess, indemnification for the city, that if any damage takes place to the railing, that the city would not be accountable for that.
We would not have a problem with that.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, I also think that I agree with Chris, like, it's like with the pole and the TDS box there, and if you're not putting your brush right next to it, like, what's the chances of it being damaged realistically?
Yeah. I know certainly while it's certainly not intentional, I certainly know of mailboxes that have gone down that technically shouldn't have gone down, but just simply because of the weight of the snow, you know. In fact, I had a neighbor that had their mailbox taken out and they were looking for the city and because they were blaming the plows, and, you know, the reality is that as they're plowing the street, if we have wet snow or whatever, sometimes it can cause problems. Our plow, you know, our public works department is pretty solid. So, you know, but it looks like the materials, you know, that you've chosen, which are in fact a fencing material, looks, you know, really solid in that regard. This isn't a flimsy railing you're talking about. You want something that can hold your weight and that you can, you know, feel good about hanging on to coming up and down the driveway. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Pat and Bill, in case people aren't familiar with Baskerville and that particular road, I live like a block away from you. I walk that street with my kids all the time. I'm aware of how steep it is. Can you describe how steep that road is and how steep your driveway is? I know exactly how steep it is.
Yeah, it's very steep. The biggest thing is it's just so difficult for us to get up and down it with the garbage cans. And as we're getting older, of course, our family members and our guests are all getting older. And I just fear that somebody is going to fall without having something to hang on to. And then they're going to have a broken hip or a broken leg or something. And to me, that's a far more serious matter rather than if the snowplow happened to plow too much snow at the end of the railing.
It was a lot easier 40 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. When we were 40 years younger, we didn't worry about it so much. We did, though, actually at that time attempt to see if there was some way that we could lower the driveway and make it level. And as I stated in the application, that was like in 1986, I think, that we checked into that, and that was such an expensive prospect and didn't give us any access to the backyard for any equipment if we had to, like, take down a tree or something. So, and they said that if we did that, there'd be so much runoff of Baskerville Avenue coming down the hill that it would hit our driveway and all go down right directly to the house. And that even if we tried to do something at that time, which is 35 years ago, it would have been in excess of $30,000, which heaven only knows is probably $150,000 now. But it's not like we haven't been aware of the problem. We were always aware that there would be an issue at some point in time, and we've reached that point in time.
Yes, Doug?
Thank you. The only other point I would like to raise here, just again, more of a typical fence type item to bring up is the vision triangle. It just comes to mind here. And so that is effectively, if you were backing out of here, off of the driveway into the street, and sort of looking over your shoulder, you know, for cross traffic, pedestrians, vehicles. I just wanted to raise that, you know, again, another fence standard would be that it be located outside of the vision triangle, that the fence not be within that. I think I see from the application that it's 3 feet tall, 36 inches, the railing itself. So between that and the 2 feet back from the curb, I think that that can help address some of these things. But just something else that I wanted to bring up, just so the commission was aware, or the board was aware.
Thank you. So, board, where are we at? Do we, in terms of hardship, in terms of emotion, anybody have any other further comment? Would anybody like to make a motion? Chris?
I'll move to approve this. I'll move to approve it. Sorry.
That's all right. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a second. Chris, since you moved approval,
I guess I should say I would second with the condition of the that if it gets damaged, that they would not hold the city liable, and the city would retain the right of way permit.
I was going to say the same thing. That's the only risk here, but I still think the Imhoff should be allowed to have the railing extend. That's the whole point, is to be able to go down to the bottom of the driveway. So there's really, it's kind of all or nothing in my mind.
Okay. And to Doug's last point around the vision triangle, is there anything that you'd want to add around the vision triangle as it relates to this?
Yes, I just want to clarify with Doug. Is this posing a problem, or are you saying given the height and that it's 2 feet back and that it's not going to impact the vision triangle?
It's often a calculation that is done sort of geometrically to calculate that out. There is an option here. You know, I'm just thinking of a potential to curve the railing or something like that, you know, at the bottom. I don't know if that's even a possibility. Another option could be just to work with the building inspector and to city staff to ensure the safe installation of the rail from a vision triangle. Something along, that's often a condition Plan Commission would put in about signage or something like that may cause, potentially cause conflict. So it's hard to tell at 3 feet. It may be, with the slope, it may be clear anyway. So I don't necessarily want to suggest changing the design, but potentially just to delegate to work with staff moving forward.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Chris, do you want to restate your motion with Brad's amendment, if you will?
Sure. So I'm moving to approve this with the condition, as long as they are somehow, I don't know how we do that in writing, but as long as they agree, the Imhoffs agree not to hold the city or its contractors responsible for damage incurred by vehicles or equipment in the process of city business, snow removal, that sort of thing.
We agree to that.
Okay, great. And Brad, you've already seconded it. Are you comfortable with the way it's?
I would add that the city would maintain the right-of-way permit.
Okay.
And I mean, I do have concerns about the vision triangle though, and I would want them to work with the city on that issue.
So that second condition, the second condition that you're asking to add to the motion, that they work with the city as it relates to the vision triangle.
Right, and I don't think Chris stated the city would maintain the right-of-way permit.
Right. Chris, are you okay with those amendments?
I am.
Okay. Right.
Could I just ask that the two that made the motion and the second just state from a more of the hardship property and just the general more ZBA points as well, please. Thanks.
Sure. So I think it's pretty clear that the hardship here is an accessibility issue and a safety issue. It's already been made clear that there's been at least one incident in the past where Mr. Imhoff was unable to go back into his home. If there had been a railing like the one he's proposing, he would have been able to return to his home. So this will allow the Imhoffs to stay in their home and to maintain safety and accessibility to their home. Is that good enough? I don't know. What else do I need to say?
Well, I think that the physical property limitations would be obviously that they have a very steep driveway, right?
Yes, the driveway is extremely steep and dangerous, and so that's a limitation of the property.
And do you want to speak to the public interest as well, please?
It sounds like nobody in the neighborhood has protested this idea, and I think it's in the public's interest to allow people who have worked hard their entire lives to stay in their home and safely.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second with several conditions. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Congratulations, Imhoffs.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have many more safe years in your home.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much. It's quite a relief. So, Doug, do we check with you on this vision thing that we gotta do?
Yes, I'll work with you tomorrow and we can talk about next steps. So I'll email you both.
And whatever we have to do to not hold the city liable.
Yes, yeah, I'll talk to my colleagues at DPW about next steps for that.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks.
Okay, that takes us to number 11, next meeting date. Doug?
Thank you. So next meeting date, July 15th, back to the regular scheduling on, I think, the third Thursday of the month. And so July 15th, we do have an application already. So we will most likely be meeting unless folks are away or if we have quorum issues. But at this point, expecting that to proceed. I guess the next point would be the discussion of the return to in-person as well, kind of coupled with that.
Sure. So as you may be aware, board members were jettisoning out of COVID Zoom world here in Dane County. And And in fact, the city council will probably go back into in-person meetings as of the middle of July is what we're shooting for. That will also be the case most likely for the Planning Commission and for several other committees. And we're just checking in with every committee to see how you feel about going to back in-person meetings. And if there's any stipulations around those meetings, if we do go back in person. Has the ZBA, Doug, traditionally met at over at City Hall in that conference room?
Typically the City Hall conference room, yes.
Yeah. So I know, for instance, at the library, where we have meetings for the Plan Commission and the City Council, they're still requiring masks at the library. So one of the stipulations is that even if we went back in person for those meetings, as long as the library is maintaining that, we would obviously be respectful of the library's policy in that regard. But so what do people think about going back to in-person meetings?
I'm okay with it. I mean, everyone's looking at my closet right now, so I think I'd rather be in a more appropriate setting.
I don't know. I saw somebody's cat running by a minute ago, so maybe that was one of our appearance. One of the folks that made an appearance tonight. But okay, what about other people, Brad?
I'm with Chris on it. I mean, as much as I love to do it from my office, I'm fine. Getting back to in person is great. As much as I enjoy seeing Chris's closet.
I'd also like to let all of you know that Brad and I will soon share a backyard property line. We're going to be neighbors, so I could go over to Brad's place too.
I didn't know that you guys backed up to one another. Double trouble. Beth, what do you think about in-person meetings?
I'm good with it. I mean, I think if we follow the council's lead, and I mean, especially sometimes we get, people trying to share their screen and it gets a little difficult, or, bigger plans. It'd be nice to be able to spread out a little bit and be in person. I think it makes it easier to present.
Yep. Okay. Ryan?
I think it makes sense to follow the council's lead. I don't see any reason why we would not meet in person if other committees are.
Right. Okay.
More people to help make sure the sensors don't go off here. Keep the lights on at City Hall.
Right.
Well, and I got disconnected during the meeting, so had we been together, I would have still been in the room.
I always like seeing our city staff go up in the middle of the meeting. How to get the sensor to go back on,
I want to know what's behind Chris.
Which?
What is that behind you?
What, that thing?
Yeah.
Oh, that's just a chair.
Oh, okay.
And a running vest.
All right. So we will look to then to get back to in-person meetings then for July works for people. Okay, great. Anything else that people need to raise before we adjourn? May I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. There you go. We're adjourned. Everybody, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.